Skyways Flight 307 was supposed to be just another routine journey from London to New York. 286 passengers, 9 crew members, and 2 experienced pilots in command. Captain Richard Hall and First Officer James Cole. For most on board, it was just another flight over the Atlantic. But for Alicia Morgan, a 28-year-old graphic designer sitting in seat 14A, it was a chance to start fresh. She was flying to New York to attend her best friend's wedding and maybe escape her own recent heartbreak. She had no idea her name would soon be remembered by the entire world. As the aircraft climbed through soft clouds and the seatbelt signs turned off, everything felt peaceful. The crew smiled as they served drinks. Children giggled at the back, and the sunlight painted the cabin in gold. Alicia opened her sketchbook, sketching the wings cutting through the sky. Flying always fascinated her. Her father was an Air Force mechanic, and as a little girl, she loved visiting the hangars, watching the blinking lights and hearing the engines roar. But she never imagined that childhood curiosity would one day mean the difference between life and death. 2 hours into the flight, the calm began to fade. A flight attendant hurried toward the cockpit, her face pale and tense. Moments later, another crew member followed. Passengers noticed the change. The chatter softened. Something was wrong. Then came the first announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated and stay calm. We are experiencing a medical situation in the cockpit." A wave of silence swept through the cabin. Alicia looked out the window. The endless ocean below suddenly looked terrifying. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. The plane still flew smoothly, but the tension grew heavier. Another announcement followed, this time shakier. "If there's a doctor or any medical professional on board, please make yourself known to the crew." A man in a white shirt quickly stood up. Everyone watched as he moved toward the cockpit. Minutes later, he came back. His face said everything before his words did. "Both pilots are unconscious," he whispered. The words hit like thunder. Gasps, prayers, trembling hands. Some passengers began to cry. Others clutched each other tightly. The plane was still cruising, but with no one at the controls. The cabin crew desperately tried to contact air traffic control. Static filled the radio. They were flying over the middle of the Atlantic, far from any immediate help. Alicia's heart raced. She stood up and approached one of the attendants. "I might be able to help," she said quietly. "I know a bit about aircraft systems. My father was in the Air Force." The attendant hesitated. "Ma'am, this is—" Before she could finish, the radio crackled. "This is ground control. Can anyone in the cockpit hear me?" Everyone froze. The attendant looked at Alicia, then nodded. "Come with me." The cockpit door opened, and Alicia stepped inside. Her breath caught in her throat. The 2 pilots lay slumped in their seats, oxygen masks covering their faces. Lights blinked everywhere, switches flickered, and warning chimes echoed softly. Alicia slid into the captain's seat, her hands trembling. She grabbed the headset and spoke, voice shaking. This is passenger Alicia Morgan. Both pilots are unconscious. What do I do?" The reply came instantly, calm but urgent. "Okay, Alicia, stay calm. We'll guide you. First, check if the autopilot is engaged." She scanned the controls, heart pounding. "Yes, it's on," she said. "Good. That'll keep the plane stable for now. We'll talk you through everything else." Just as she began to breathe again, a loud alarm went off, a red light flashing on the main panel. The aircraft jolted sharply to the right, passengers screaming in the cabin. Alicia gripped the control yoke with both hands, eyes wide, every muscle shaking. "Ground control! The plane's tilting! What do I do?" The radio hissed with static, then silence. And for the first time in her life, Alicia Morgan realized she was the only one left to save 286 lives. Alicia's hands tightened around the control yoke as the plane tilted, dangerously to the right. The alarm blared through the cockpit. "Autopilot disengaged!" Panic echoed from the cabin behind her. Luggage rattled and someone screamed. "Ground control! The plane's turning. What do I do?" she shouted into the headset. For a few agonizing seconds, there was only static. Then a voice broke through. "This is Boston Center. We read you, Flight 307. Who's speaking?" "This is passenger Alicia Morgan. Both pilots are unconscious. I'm in the cockpit." The controller's voice remained calm but firm. "Okay, Alicia. Listen to me carefully. Keep both hands on the control yoke. Pull it slightly left, not too much. We need to level the wings. Alicia's breathing was fast and shallow. She followed the instructions, adjusting the yoke gently. The horizon outside the cockpit windows began to straighten. "Good job, Flight 307. You're doing fine," said the voice. "Now, can you see your altitude on the main screen in front of you?" "Yes, it says 31,000 feet," she replied. "Perfect. Maintain that altitude. We're going to guide you step by step. Help is on the way." For a brief moment, Alicia exhaled. She could feel sweat dripping down her neck. Behind her, the cabin crew stood frozen, watching her like their lives depended on every move she made. Because they did. Alicia glanced at the unconscious pilots. Captain Hall's head was slumped against his shoulder. The oxygen mask covered his face, fogging slightly with every weak breath. "What happened to them?" she whispered. One of the attendants spoke softly. "We think it's food poisoning. They both had the same meal before takeoff." Alicia swallowed hard. "So I'm really the only one who can fly this?" The attendant nodded. "Yes, with their help," she said, gesturing to the radio. "All right, Alicia," came the voice again. "You're doing great. We've cleared nearby air traffic and scrambled a guide plane to your position. It'll be with you soon. But until then, we need to make sure your speed and altitude stay stable." Alicia looked at the instrument panel, dozens of dials. Blinking lights, switches she didn't understand. "Tell me what to touch," she said. "Okay, see the throttle levers in the middle? Push them just a little forward. Yes. Like that? Perfect. Now watch your airspeed indicator. Keep it around 290 knots. Her heart hammered, but her focus sharpened. Every sound, every vibration of the jet felt amplified. She could hear the crying from the cabin, people praying, whispering names of loved ones. "Boston Center," she asked quietly. "What happens if—" "I can't do this!" The controller paused. Then he said softly, "Alicia, you can do this. You're already flying the plane. You're saving 286 people right now." His words hit her like a surge of electricity. Fear turned into determination. Suddenly, the plane shuddered again. The autopilot warning blinked red once more, followed by another alarm. "Fuel imbalance detected." Alicia gasped. "What now?" "It's okay," said the voice. "That means one wing tank is burning faster than the other. We'll fix that. See the switches labeled fuel crossfeed? Flip the center one up." She did. The noise softened. The red light turned amber, then green. "Good work, Alicia. You're keeping this plane alive." For the first time, she allowed herself to look out the cockpit window. The endless blue ocean stretched beneath her, calm, infinite, terrifying. "Boston Center," she asked, her voice steadier now. "Where do we land?" "Nearest airport is Gander, Newfoundland. We're redirecting you there. A rescue crew is ready, and we'll have a pilot talking you through every move." Alicia nodded to herself. "Okay, I can do this." Behind her, the chief flight attendant placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone," she whispered. The radio crackled again. "Flight 307, we have visual. A Coast Guard aircraft is flying beside you. You're not alone up there anymore." Alicia turned through the cockpit window. A small plane appeared in the distance, its lights blinking as it approached. For the first time since the nightmare began, hope flickered inside her. But the worst was yet to come. Because 20 minutes later, as she prepared for descent, another alarm sounded. "Hydraulic pressure failure," and this time no one had the answer. The alarm screamed through the cockpit like a siren of doom. The aircraft jolted again, rattling violently. Alicia's pulse spiked. She could hear passengers crying, praying, shouting behind the closed door. "Boston Center! What does that mean?" She yelled into the radio. Static. Then the calm, firm voice returned. "Alicia, listen to me carefully. Hydraulic pressure helps control your landing gear, brakes, and steering. We'll need to manage this manually." Alicia's voice trembled. "So you're saying, I can't land the plane?" "You can. But it's going to be difficult." "We'll guide you through it step by step." She stared at the countless blinking lights, the numbers on the dials spinning faster. The ground was still 30,000 feet below, an endless ocean stretching to the horizon. The Coast Guard. Aircraft outside her window flashed. Its lights twice, a signal that they were still there. She took a deep breath. "Okay," she whispered. "Tell me what to do." "First," the controller said, We're starting your descent. Pull the throttle levers gently back. Reduce speed to 260 knots. Alicia followed the command, hands steady now, not fearless, but focused. The engine's roar softened as the plane slowly began to descend. The clouds grew thicker, gray mist swallowing the sunlight. Good, the voice said. Now adjust your vertical speed dial. Lower it to -1/500. She did. The plane dipped smoothly. Outside the window, the blue of the ocean came closer. Boston Center, she asked. What about the landing gear? If hydraulics fail, will they deploy? There was a pause, too long for comfort. Then came the careful reply. We'll try manual gear release before final approach. You'll need to pull a lever near your right side, and it's red, marked emergency gear, but don't do it yet. Alicia nodded. Her heart pounded against her chest. In the cabin, the flight attendants made announcements, trying to keep everyone calm. But the fear was visible. People clutching hands. Children crying softly, prayers whispered into the air. Alicia could feel their voices behind her, depending on her. She thought of her father, the man who had taught her how aircraft worked, who always said, machines can fail, but courage can't. For the first time since this began, she smiled faintly. Flight 307, said Boston Center. You're 10 minutes from Gander Airport. Weather is clear. Runway 22 is ready for you. Fire and medical crews are standing by. Copy that, Alicia said. Her voice had changed, no longer trembling, but steady and confident. All right, Alicia, the controller continued. We're going to lower the landing gear now. Reach to your right. Do you see the red lever? Yes. Pull it slowly, all the way down. She did. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep mechanical groan. The plane shuddered as the gears began to extend. Main gear down, she said, glancing at the lights. But one light stayed red. Front gear isn't locked, she shouted. Understood, said the voice. You'll have to land with the nose partially unsupported. Keep the speed low and angle steady. Alicia felt her throat tighten. So it might crash? There was silence. Then, you're trained by instinct now, Alicia. Trust it. The coastline of Newfoundland appeared through the mist. Green fields and a long gray runway waiting below. Flaps 15, said the voice. She adjusted them. The plane slowed further. The alarms quieted. Her hands were firm on the yoke. Boston Center to Flight 307, you're clear to land. Alicia inhaled deeply. Here we go. The massive jet descended toward the runway. The wheels touched. Down with a heavy thud, sparks flashed. As the front gear struggled, the plane tilted forward, screeching across the concrete, smoke rising from the tires. Alicia pulled the reverse thrusters and held on tight. The plane slowed more, until, finally, it stopped. The cockpit fell silent. Alicia exhaled a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her hands shook violently. The passengers behind erupted into cheers and sobs. Flight 307, said the voice in her headset, softer now. Alicia Morgan, you just landed a Boeing 787. Tears filled her eyes as sunlight broke through the clouds above. She whispered, we made it. But then, a faint beep on the radar caught her attention. Another storm cell was forming fast behind them, and rescue hadn't arrived yet. The wheels of Flight 207 slammed onto the runway with a deafening screech. For a split second, no one breathed. Then the cabin filled with cries, shouts, and tears. The raw sound of 182 hearts, realizing they were alive. Inside the cockpit, Alicia Morgan sat frozen, her hands still gripping the controls. Her knuckles were white, her eyes wide, her entire body trembling. The plane was slowing. It wasn't crashing. It was actually stopping. The impossible had just happened. Outside, emergency lights flared across the dark runway, red, blue, and white beams slicing through the early morning mist. Fire trucks and ambulances raced toward the aircraft. The smell of burnt rubber and jet fuel hung in the air. For the first time in 2 hours, Alicia exhaled. It wasn't calm. It was the shaky, desperate release of someone who had been holding the world together with nothing but willpower. Flight 207, you are on the ground, a voice crackled through her headset. You're safe now. That single word, safe, broke her. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered to herself, we made it. A medic rushed into the cockpit, helping her unbuckle. Her legs nearly gave out the moment she stood. Every muscle in her body screamed, but she couldn't stop smiling. As they led her down the stairs, the cabin door opened, and hundreds of eyes turned toward her. Then came the applause, thunderous, echoing through the night. Passengers clapped, cried, and reached out to touch her hand. Some whispered, "Thank you," others just wept. In that moment, Alicia Morgan, the woman who had boarded this flight as an ordinary passenger, was something else entirely, a hero. Hours later, Alicia sat in a cold conference room surrounded by aviation officials, investigators, and doctors. Her clothes were still damp with sweat, her hair tied back messily. On the table in front of her lay the flight recorder data, still warm from the machine. The lead investigator leaned forward. "Miss Morgan, do you have any flight training? Even simulators, games?" Alicia shook her head slowly. "No, just instructions from the tower." The man exchanged glances with his team. "You performed a textbook landing under total hydraulic failure. That's virtually impossible." Alicia gave a faint smile. "I didn't think about what was impossible. I just listened." "To who?" someone asked. She looked at them, eyes tired but calm. "To the voice on the radio," she said softly, "and maybe to something above me." Silence filled the room. The investigators knew the truth of the data. Both pilots had died within minutes from carbon monoxide poisoning caused by a faulty vent seal. The odds of any passenger surviving that flight were less than 1 in a billion. And yet here she was. Before leaving, the investigator stood. "For what it's worth," he said quietly. "The world owes you more than we can say." By dawn, the story had circled the globe. Headlines screamed, "Passenger lands 200-ton jet after both pilots collapse." Footage of the landing, sparks flying, smoke trailing, sirens blaring, replayed endlessly across every news channel. Social media exploded with Dar Flight 207 and Dabrar Alicia the hero. Commentators called her the calmest soul in chaos. Others compared her to Captain Sully, the legend who landed on the Hudson. But Alicia didn't see any of it. She was in a hospital bed, IV in her arm, staring blankly at the ceiling. Doctors told her she'd survived extreme stress and oxygen deprivation. Reporters waited outside her room begging for an interview. She refused them all. She wasn't ready to be the center of the world's story. She just wanted to breathe. The only visitor she allowed was the air traffic controller, who'd guided her that night. He entered quietly, eyes filled with awe. "I've been in this job 22 years, he said. "I've talked dozens of pilots through emergencies, but never someone who wasn't a pilot." Alicia smiled weakly. "I wasn't a pilot either," she whispered. "Just someone who didn't want to die." He nodded. "And because of that, no one else did either." Alicia stood by her hotel window overlooking the Atlantic. The same ocean she'd once flown, helplessly above now, shimmered calmly in the evening sun. Below, news vans still lined the street. Inside, her phone buzzed constantly, requests for interviews, book deals, documentaries. She ignored them all. Every night she replayed the landing in her mind, the alarms, the shaking, the voice guiding her down, and that final jolt when the wheels hit the ground. Sometimes she woke up sweating, hearing the sound of the stall warning in her dreams. But more often she simply sat awake, thinking about the lives she'd unknowingly carried in her hands. Children, couples, strangers, all breathing because she didn't give up. Her phone buzzed again. A message appeared from the same controller. "You didn't just land a plane, Alicia. You reminded everyone that the impossible isn't impossible." Alicia smiled through tears. She whispered, "Maybe that's what flying really is. Trusting the sky even when you're falling." Outside, a plane crossed the horizon, its lights blinking gently. This time she didn't feel fear, only peace. Months later, Alicia stood on a stage in Washington, the spotlight bright against a Navy backdrop. Before her sat pilots, first responders, and survivors from Flight 207. The FAA administrator pinned a small silver medal on her chest, the Civilian Bravery Award. Applause thundered through the hall. When it quieted, she stepped to the microphone. Her voice shook slightly, but her words were steady. "I wasn't supposed to be in that cockpit. I didn't have training or experience. But when everything went dark, Someone had to try. I did it because 182 hearts were waiting for someone not to give up. She paused, eyes glistening. I don't think I was alone up there. Maybe the sky was helping me too. The audience rose in a standing ovation, not for perfection, but for courage. As Alicia left the stage, sunlight spilled through the tall windows. Outside, a single white jet ascended into the clouds. She watched it disappear into the blue, a faint smile crossing her face. For the world, she would forever be remembered as the passenger who landed the plane. But for Alicia Morgan, she had found something even greater: faith in herself. Faith that sometimes, even when everything fails, the human heart can still learn to fly.